In the distant future, humanity had reached a point no one could have imagined just a few centuries ago. After years of fighting among themselves, countries on Earth finally learned to put aside their differences. They worked together to build a united world, one that could look beyond its own problems and into the stars. This was a time of hope and courage. The people of Earth had long dreamed of exploring the vast universe around them, and now they were ready to make that dream a reality. The world was no longer divided into small, competing nations. Instead, there was a great alliance called the Terran Accord. It was made up of all the countries and cultures of Earth, working as one. This alliance was more than just a government. It was a symbol of humanity's determination to survive and thrive in a vast, unknown universe. The leaders of the Terran Accord believed that to protect their home and to grow, they needed to look outward, beyond Earth, into the infinite darkness of space. Over many years, the scientists, engineers, and explorers of this new world worked tirelessly on a project that would change everything. They designed what would become humanity's most powerful starship ever created. This ship was not like the small, fast explorers sent on early space missions. It was enormous, 8 kilometers long, and equipped with the most advanced technology known to humankind. This was the first of the Titan-class starships, a name chosen to reflect its size and strength. The ship was called the Invictus. That name meant unconquered or invincible, showing the confidence and hope humanity placed in it. The Invictus was built not only as a vessel for travel but also as a floating city. Thousands of people could live and work on it, and it carried equipment capable of studying stars, planets, and any signs of life it might find. It was a masterpiece, the result of decades of work by the greatest minds of the Terran Accord. But the Invictus was more than just a symbol of power and technology. It was humanity's first step into the unknown reaches of space, into areas where no human had ever gone before. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, and there was a particular region that had caught the attention of the scientists, a place far from Earth where strange signals were being detected. These signals were not random noise from space like the hum of stars or the crackle of cosmic dust. Instead, they were patterns, rhythms that suggested something intelligent was trying to communicate. The Terran Accord decided to send the Invictus on its first mission, to follow those signals and discover who or what was sending them. It was a bold decision. Sending such a powerful ship so far away from Earth was risky, but the potential rewards were greater than anyone could imagine. The crew selected for the mission were the best of the best. They were explorers, scientists, engineers, and diplomats, trained not only to handle the ship's technology, but also to face whatever unknown challenges awaited them. As the Invictus left Earth's orbit, people across the globe watched with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The launch was broadcast live, and millions held their breath as the great ship moved smoothly into the blackness of space. It was a proud moment for humanity. After centuries of struggle, they were finally reaching out to the stars with something that could truly change their place in the universe. The journey took the crew through familiar parts of the solar system before moving into deeper, less explored regions. On board the Invictus, life was busy and full of purpose. Scientists studied data from distant stars. Engineers maintained the massive engines, and the ship's AI helped navigate through asteroid fields and cosmic storms. Even though the ship was enormous, every person felt connected to the mission. They were part of something bigger than themselves, a story that might be told for generations. After months of travel, the Invictus entered a mysterious area known as the Ereban Expanse. It was a dark, quiet region far from any known stars. But it was here that the strange signals grew stronger. The signals came in rhythmic pulses, almost like a song or a code waiting to be understood. The crew worked day and night to analyze the data. The possibility that these signals came from an intelligent source excited everyone. If true, it would be the first confirmed contact with alien life in human history. News of the mission spread quickly. Other species that humanity had met before, some friendly, some cautious, were watching too. The galaxy was a big place with many civilizations living on countless planets. But no one had seen contact between two truly advanced races in many centuries. Some hoped this encounter would bring peace and cooperation, while others feared it might lead to conflict. As the Invictus moved closer to the source of the signals, strange things began to happen. The ship's instruments detected changes in time itself. Clocks seemed to slow down or speed up. Light bent oddly around the ship. The crew noticed that some moments felt stretched or shortened. These temporal anomalies suggested that whatever was sending the signals might have control over space and time, or at least affect them in ways no one had seen before. The mood on board grew tense but curious. Everyone knew they were close to something extraordinary. Captain and crew prepared carefully, ready to meet whatever awaited them. They understood this encounter could change humanity forever, but no one could predict how. Finally, after crossing the last stretch of space toward the signal's origin, the Invictus reached orbit around a gas giant called Fear. From the outside, the planet looked lifeless, just a swirling ball of clouds and storms. But in orbit, the ship's scanners found something incredible. There, floating silently in space, was a massive structure unlike anything anyone had seen. It was huge, miles in size, shaped like a spiral flower made of dark, shiny material that reflected the stars like glass. It seemed both natural and artificial, as if it had been built by a mind far beyond human understanding. The structure was dormant, cold, and quiet at first, but it was clear that it was waiting for something or someone. The crew sent out a probe to send signals toward the structure, hoping to awaken whatever lay inside. When the probe signal hit, the megastructure pulsed with energy, lighting up with colors and patterns that no one could have imagined. Then from within the structure, an enormous entity appeared. It was unlike any life form ever seen. It was not solid or physical in the way humans understood. Instead, it seemed made of light, shadows, and energy all at once. The entity moved and shifted like a living storm, powerful but calm. Its presence filled the ship's sensors and the minds of the crew with awe and wonder. Then, without speaking words, the entity sent a message, not in sound but through waves of meaning and emotion. The message was clear. Why have your Titans returned? This question stunned everyone. It suggested the entity had known about the Titan-class ships long before this moment. How could this be? What was the connection between this strange being and humanity's greatest starship? The crew realized that this encounter was not just about discovery. It was about history, memory, and perhaps something much older than anyone had imagined. As the Invictus hovered near the structure, the crew understood that this moment was the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, a chapter that would shake the very foundation of their understanding of the universe. The galaxy held its breath as humanity's first meeting with this alien presence unfolded. What secrets would be revealed? What dangers might lie ahead? For now, the silence between the stars was filled with wonder, and the promise of a story waiting to be told. After the first pulse of energy from the mysterious structure, a deep silence fell over the Invictus. The crew stared at their screens and at each other, their minds racing to understand what had just happened. The massive alien presence was no longer dormant. It was awake, and it seemed to be aware of them, aware of humanity's greatest creation floating silently nearby. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. News of the Invictus's approach and the strange signals had spread quietly but quickly. Other advanced civilizations were watching from a distance, hidden in the shadows of their own star systems. Many had not encountered another intelligent race in centuries, and the excitement mixed with fear was real. Some of these watchers sent messages to their allies, wondering if this contact would lead to friendship or war. On the Invictus, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. The crew worked in shifts, analyzing every piece of data the ship's instruments could gather. The signals coming from the alien structure were complex, unlike any code or language humans had seen before. They weren't just sounds or flashes of light. They were patterns that seemed to hold deep meaning, hidden layers waiting to be understood. The ship's communication officers tried different methods to respond, sending out pulses, bursts of light, and even carefully designed patterns based on mathematics. The alien structure reacted every time, glowing brighter and sending back new signals. It was as if it was trying to teach or test them, but no one on the Invictus could be sure. While the scientists worked, the crew noticed something strange happening around the ship. Time itself seemed to behave oddly. Some clocks on the bridge ticked faster, others slower. Crew members found themselves losing track of how much time had passed. One moment it felt like minutes, the next hours or even days. These strange time effects made everyone feel unsettled but also deeply curious. The captain called a meeting with the senior officers. They spoke quietly about the risks and possibilities, They all understood that the strange signals and the temporal shifts might be signs that the alien presence had control over space and time, or at least some connection to it. This was unlike any encounter humans had ever prepared for. Despite the uncertainty, the mission had to continue. The crew was reminded again and again why they were there: to explore, to learn, and to reach out to something beyond human understanding. This mission was bigger than any one person, any single ship, or even Earth itself. It was about the future of humanity and its place in the galaxy. Back on Earth, the news about the Invictus and the strange signals stirred strong emotions. Some people were excited, hopeful that this contact might bring new knowledge and peace. Others were scared, worried that humanity might be facing something dangerous. Governments around the world held emergency meetings while people watched live broadcasts, hoping for good news. In distant parts of the galaxy, other intelligent species prepared quietly. Some sent small scout ships to observe the Invictus from afar. Others tried to communicate with their own networks, asking if anyone knew more about this new presence. The fear of the unknown was spreading quickly. After all, no one knew if this was a peaceful encounter or the start of something far more threatening. On board the Invictus, the crew remained focused. They formed teams to work on decoding the signals. Using advanced algorithms and the ship's AI, they tried to find patterns and answers hidden inside the waves of energy coming from the alien structure. Slowly, small breakthroughs began to happen. They discovered that the signals followed complex mathematical rhythms. These rhythms were similar to those used in human music and language, but far more advanced and layered. It was like a puzzle, a message designed to be understood only by a species capable of deep thought and creativity. The communication officers sent back responses crafted with care, using the same rhythms and patterns. Each time they sent a message, the alien structure pulsed in reply, sometimes with flashes of bright light or waves of energy that felt almost like a heartbeat. The crew began to feel a connection, not with a person or a simple machine, but with something ancient and powerful. The Invictus's scientists also noticed that the alien presence seemed to affect the ship itself. Sensors sometimes lost readings or showed strange data. Communications within the ship became harder to maintain as the time anomalies grew stronger. It was as if the alien structure was testing the limits of human technology, pushing the ship and its crew to adapt. Despite these challenges, the mood on the ship remained hopeful. The crew was united by the knowledge that they were making history. They knew they were the first humans to truly meet an alien intelligence. This made them proud but also aware of the great responsibility they carried. One day, after weeks of careful communication, the alien presence sent a new kind of message. It was different from the earlier pulses, more clear, more direct. The message seemed to reach into the minds of everyone on board, not with words but with feelings and images. The crew saw visions of stars and galaxies, of great cities made of light and shadow, and of beings who had lived long before humans had even appeared on Earth. The message told a story of ancient times when powerful creatures called Titans had walked the stars. These Titans had built great machines and explored far beyond their worlds. But then, for reasons unknown, they vanished, leaving behind only echoes in space. This revelation stunned the crew. The idea that humans might be connected to these ancient Titans challenged everything they thought they knew about their history and their place in the universe. It raised questions that were difficult to answer. Were humans the descendants of these Titans? Had they forgotten their true past? Or was this alien presence simply sharing knowledge to warn them? As the Invictus continued its mission, the crew prepared for whatever might come next. They understood that this encounter could change the galaxy forever. Other civilizations would learn of it and the balance of power might shift. The crew knew that their actions could shape the future, not just for humanity but for all the beings who lived among the stars. Meanwhile, the leaders of the Terran Accord debated their next steps. Some urged caution, fearing that the alien presence might be a threat. Others believed that this was a chance to build new alliances and bring peace to the galaxy. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The discovery of intelligent life beyond Earth had changed everything. On board the Invictus, the crew stayed vigilant. They continued to study the signals, the time anomalies, and the alien structure's reactions. Each day brought new surprises and new challenges. They were explorers on the edge of the known universe, facing mysteries deeper than any of them had ever imagined. As the Invictus orbited the gas giant, the alien presence remained a silent guardian. Its glowing form shifted and pulsed, a constant reminder that humanity was no longer alone. The stars around them sparkled with possibilities, some bright and hopeful, others dark and unknown. The galaxy, once silent and distant, was now watching. The first true meeting between humanity and an alien intelligence had begun. It was a moment filled with wonder, fear, and hope, a moment that would be remembered for generations to come. And in that silence, beneath the vastness of space, the story of the Titans and humanity was only just beginning. The crew of Invictus had been watching the alien structure for weeks. Even though it hadn't moved since the first time it lit up, no one on board believed it was truly still. Everyone could feel something watching them back. It wasn't a scary feeling, but more like being in the presence of something far bigger, something ancient, intelligent and aware. Then, without warning, it happened. The massive structure near Hethera 44 sent out another wave of light and energy. It wasn't violent, just powerful. Soft pulses moved through space like ripples in water. Lights danced across its surface, flowing in patterns like writing or music. The crew scrambled to understand it. The wave reached the ship and passed through it harmlessly, but everyone felt it, deep inside, like a distant voice whispering directly into their minds. And then it appeared. From within the spiral structure, something emerged. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a creature in the way people understood life. It looked like it was made of energy and mist, glowing softly, changing shape as it floated in space. At times it looked like a giant with many arms. Other times it stretched across the sky like a ribbon of light. It was beautiful, mysterious, and beyond anything human science had ever imagined. The crew gathered on the observation deck, staring in silence. Even those in engineering and control rooms paused to watch it on their monitors. For a few minutes, no one spoke. There were no alarms, no shouts, no commands, just quiet awe. And then in the stillness, a message came, not through words, not through sound, but through a feeling strong and clear. Every person on the ship heard the same thing in their minds, even though nothing was said out loud. Why have your Titans returned? It was a question, but also more than a question. It was filled with emotion, confusion, curiosity, a hint of sadness. No one on board truly understood what it meant, but it sent a chill down their spines. The ship's captain called a meeting in the main briefing hall. People gathered quickly. No one needed to be told twice. The energy entity was still floating nearby, not moving aggressively, just waiting, watching. The scientists were the first to speak. They tried to explain the energy readings, the strange way the entity existed in space but also seemed to affect time. They admitted they didn't understand most of it. The structure and the being inside were simply too advanced. It was like trying to explain a storm by looking at one raindrop. Others spoke about the message, about the word Titans. The only thing called Titan in modern human history was their ship class, the Titan-class starships. But this entity spoke as if Titans were something it already knew. Not something new. That's when the question started. What if humanity wasn't the first advanced civilization? What if a long time ago, before any written record, another form of humanity or something like them had traveled the stars? What if those ancient beings were the original Titans? The idea was shocking. History didn't record anything like that. But space was old, very old. The universe was full of forgotten stories. Maybe the truth had been lost over time. The theory began to spread through the crew like wildfire. What if the Invictus had reminded the entity of someone or something it had once known? What if the ship's size, shape, or technology brought back a memory buried deep in time? That night, as the Invictus stayed in orbit near the spiral structure, people aboard the ship lay awake. Some stared out of windows, hoping to understand what the entity truly wanted. Others scrolled through old mission files, trying to find any detail that could explain what Titans meant to this being. The next day, the entity spoke again, if it could be called speaking. Once more, it reached into the minds of everyone on board. This time, the images were stronger, clearer. They saw giant ships floating in space, even larger than the Invictus. These ships glowed with energy, moved faster than light, and carried beings that looked human, not exactly, but close. These beings were tall, graceful, and wore suits that shimmered like stars. They moved with confidence like they belonged among the galaxies. They saw planets transformed in days, moons turned into cities, and dying stars reignited by strange machines. They saw peace, and then war. A sudden change in the vision showed battles across entire star systems. Ships exploding, worlds cracking apart, and then silence. The great beings, the Titans, were gone, and finally a single image remained, a small blue planet floating quietly in space. Earth. When the vision ended, many on board were left shaken. Some had tears in their eyes. Others were pale, silent, trying to process what they had seen. The conclusion was hard to ignore. This being, this ancient entity, had memories of a race that might have been connected to humans. A race that had reached the heights of the stars, only to disappear after something terrible. A race the galaxy hadn't seen for a long, long time, and now the Invictus had arrived, a Titan reborn. Word of the encounter began to spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations who had been quietly observing from afar began to react. They sent out their own messages asking questions, demanding answers. Some feared the return of the Titans. Others were simply stunned by the news. For many, it confirmed old legends, stories passed down over generations about great beings who once shaped the stars. And now, the signs were clear. The Titans had returned. Back on the Invictus, debates broke out. What should they do next? Should they leave, now that they had made contact? Should they stay and try to learn more? Could this being be trusted? One officer suggested trying to communicate directly with the entity again, this time asking who it was. The crew agreed and sent a new pattern of signals, simple questions made with light and rhythm. The entity responded not with words, but with a name of sorts. It projected a single idea into their minds. I am the echo of Ithra. The name didn't mean anything to the humans, but the way it was shared slowly, almost gently, felt important. Ithra, an old name? Place? A being? The echo then sent another image. A great star collapsing. Not from war or natural cause, but by choice. It was as if something had shut itself down to protect others. The message came with another feeling, regret. Deep sorrow. Sacrifice. The echo of Ithra had not just witnessed the fall of the Titans. It had been a part of it. Now it had awakened because it believed the Titans had returned. And it wanted to know, would they make the same mistakes? The crew didn't have answers yet. But one thing was clear, this was only the beginning. The Invictus wasn't just on a mission of exploration anymore. It was part of a story older than they could understand. A story that was now unfolding again. And somewhere out there, the rest of the galaxy was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. After the encounter with the echo of Ithra, the crew of the Invictus felt a mix of excitement, fear, and deep curiosity. This ancient entity was no longer just a mystery far away. It was now part of their lives, their mission, and possibly their future. The sense of being part of something bigger was both thrilling and heavy. The Invictus stayed near the spiral structure in orbit around the gas giant. The crew worked harder than ever, trying to understand what the echo meant by the Titan's return and what lessons history might hold for them. They knew that this wasn't just a meeting of two species. It was a meeting of two times, of past and present. The ship's scientists pored over every piece of information they could gather. They studied the energy patterns, the time distortions, and the mysterious pulses sent by the echo. The technology on board was the best humanity had ever created, but it felt small compared to the vast knowledge and power represented by the ancient entity. Some of the crew members began to feel the weight of the unknown. It wasn't just a scientific challenge, it was personal. Many had left behind families, homes, and the safety of Earth to be on this mission. Now they faced questions bigger than any one person could answer. Who were the Titans? What had happened to them? And what did it mean for humanity now? One day, a group of scientists suggested a new approach. Instead of trying to understand the messages as pure data, what if they looked at them as a story? What if the signals from the echo were more like memories being shared, or a warning told through images and feelings? The idea caught on quickly. For years, humans had been telling stories to teach lessons and remember history. Maybe the echo was doing something similar, telling a story from its own ancient past to help the Invictus crew understand. The scientists started working with the ship's AI to translate the energy pulses into what they called visual memories. These were pictures and scenes, that appeared on the ship's large observation screens. Slowly, a story began to unfold. They saw worlds built in shining cities, where beings lived in peace and harmony with technology. These places were beautiful but fragile. The Titans, it seemed, had created wonders beyond imagination. Machines that could heal planets, energy that flowed without end, and ships that traveled across the universe like thoughts. But the story also showed something darker. It told of pride and conflict. Some Titans had wanted more power, more control. They fought among themselves, and their battles damaged the worlds they had created. The war was not quick. It lasted generations, breaking families and tearing apart civilizations. In the end, the Titans chose to disappear. It was not defeat, but a sacrifice. They closed their great cities and ships, hiding their power to stop the destruction from spreading. The echo of Ithra had been left behind, a watcher waiting for the time when the Titans might return. For the crew of the Invictus, the story was a warning. It showed what could happen if power was used without care. It showed the cost of pride and the danger of forgetting history, but it was also a story of hope. The Titans had left behind clues, knowledge, and a chance to do better. Maybe humanity, the new Titans, could learn from the past and create a future where peace was possible. While the crew worked to understand the story, the captain sent a message back to Earth and the Terran Accord. The message was simple but powerful. They had made contact. They had found a presence older than any known civilization, one that knew of the Titans, and they were learning lessons that could change everything. The response from Earth was immediate. Governments, scientists, and ordinary people were watching the mission with a mix of awe and concern. For many, it was the greatest discovery in human history, but for others, it raised fears. Was humanity ready to face such a powerful and ancient presence? Could the mistakes of the past happen again? Meanwhile, other alien civilizations were reacting. Some sent envoys to the Invictus through communication networks, offering help or warning against trusting the Echo. There were voices that said the Titans were dangerous, that they had destroyed themselves once and could do so again. Others believed this was a chance to build new alliances and explore the galaxy together. Back on the Invictus, the crew knew they had to be careful. They had to balance hope and caution, curiosity and respect. They prepared to take a next step, to try and learn directly from the Echo of Ithra, to ask questions and listen closely. Using the ship's advanced communication systems, they sent a new message. This time, the message was not just questions, but also a promise that humanity wanted to learn, to grow, and to avoid the mistakes of the past. The message was filled with simple but honest words: peace, respect, and hope. The Echo responded, not in words, but in feelings. The crew felt a deep calm wash over them, a sense of trust and understanding. The ancient presence showed visions of places where Titans and others had lived in harmony. It shared knowledge of technologies that healed rather than destroyed. It showed paths forward, not easy but possible. The encounter changed the crew. They felt a responsibility far beyond their mission. They were no longer just explorers or scientists. They were ambassadors for all humanity. They carried the hopes and fears of billions with them. The days that followed were filled with hard work. The Invictus sent probes to explore the spiral structure more closely. They collected data and sent it back to Earth. They prepared for the possibility of meeting the entity face to face, or whatever form it might take. At the same time, the crew trained for emergencies. They didn't know if the Echo was truly friendly or if something could go wrong. They practiced communication drills, emergency procedures, and worked to keep morale high. The relationship between the Invictus and the Echo grew. It was like learning to speak a new language, one filled with emotions, images, and concepts far beyond human experience. The crew began to understand that this was not just a meeting between two beings, but between two ways of being in the universe. As weeks passed, a new feeling grew aboard the Invictus: hope. Hope that humanity could become more than it had been, that the mistakes of the past might be healed by knowledge and care, that the Titan story was not the end but a new beginning. The galaxy watched, waiting for peace, for change, for the future, and for the Invictus and its crew. The journey was only just beginning. The days on the Invictus passed with a steady rhythm, but beneath the surface the crew felt a growing tension. The presence of the Echo of Ithra was no longer just a mystery. They now understood it was a guide, a guardian, and a witness to a story much older than humanity itself. Yet with every discovery, new questions arose. The crew had learned much from the vision shared by the Echo, the rise and fall of the Titans, their power, their mistakes, and their final sacrifice. But now the question was clear. What role would humanity play in this story? Were they truly the next Titans? And if so, were they ready? The captain gathered the senior officers for a meeting. The room was quiet but intense, filled with the weight of responsibility. Everyone knew the decisions made here could shape not just the mission, but the future of humanity. One of the officers spoke first, voice steady but firm. We need to consider what it means to be Titans. The past shows us both the incredible power and the great danger that comes with it. We have to decide if we want to follow that path. Another officer nodded. We must learn everything we can from the Echo. But we should also prepare for the possibility that not all ancient knowledge is safe. Some parts of their history could be warnings, others could be traps. The scientists agreed. The data they gathered about the spiral structure and the energy waves indicated that the technology was beyond anything humans had seen. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. They had to be careful. Meanwhile, the crew began training in new ways. Some focused on diplomacy, learning how to communicate with the Echo and with other alien civilizations who were watching closely. Others worked on defense just in case things took a turn for the worse. But the captain reminded everyone that fear should not rule their actions. Our mission is to explore and understand. We must move forward with courage, respect, and hope. As the Invictus remained in orbit, a new event surprised the crew. One morning, as they prepared for another attempt at communication, the spiral structure opened like a flower. From its center, a corridor of light extended toward the ship. A bridge, perhaps, or a way to meet the Echo more directly. The captain decided to send a small team of explorers through the light corridor. They were equipped with advanced suits and tools, ready for anything. The crew watched on their monitors, holding their breath as the team stepped inside. Inside the corridor, the explorers found themselves in a space that felt both familiar and alien. The walls glowed with soft light, shifting colors and patterns that reminded them of ocean waves. Sounds echoed gently, like music or whispered stories. As they moved deeper, the explorers saw images projected around them, scenes from the past and the future. They saw the Titans building their great machines, then struggling against each other. They saw the choice to disappear, to protect the galaxy from their own mistakes. And then they saw humans, ordinary people, just like those on the Invictus, looking up at the stars, full of wonder and hope. The explorers understood that the Echo wanted them to know that the story was not over. The future was still unwritten. Humans had the chance to learn from the Titans' past and choose a different path. Back on the Invictus, the crew cheered when the explorers returned safely. The information they brought was priceless. It helped the crew see the bigger picture and feel more connected to the ancient story. But with new understanding came new challenges. Some crew members struggled with the weight of responsibility. They worried about what it meant to carry the legacy of the Titans. Could they live up to it? Would they fail? The captain held talks with the crew, reminding them that everyone had a role to play. It wasn't about being perfect, but about making choices with care and courage. The future depended on them all, working together. In the days that followed, the Invictus sent messages to the Echo, asking questions about the technologies and lessons it had witnessed. The answers came slowly, not always in words, but through visions and feelings. One message stood out, a vision of a future where humans and other civilizations worked together, sharing knowledge and peace, building something new from the lessons of the past. The crew realized that this was more than a warning. It was a call to action. They were being asked to choose a path not just for themselves, but for the whole galaxy. At the same time, the Invictus received messages from other species. Some offered friendship and support, hoping to join in this new chapter. Others remained cautious, watching closely, unsure if the return of the Titans would bring hope or danger. The crew understood that their mission was no longer just about exploration. It was about building bridges, between the past and present, between species, and between hope and fear. As they prepared to leave orbit and continue their journey, the crew of the Invictus felt a deep connection to the Echo, to the Titan story, and to each other. They were part of something greater than themselves, a story of growth, struggle, and the endless search for understanding. The galaxy awaited their next move, and humanity was ready to face it. The Invictus left the orbit of the spiral structure, slowly moving away from the gas giant where the echo of Ithra had made its presence known. The crew felt a mix of relief and excitement, but also a quiet understanding that their mission was changing forever. They had touched something ancient, something vast, and it had touched them back. Though the ship was moving away, the connection with the echo didn't end. Through subtle pulses of energy and deep visions shared across space, the crew continued to learn. The echo was no longer just a mysterious presence. It had become a guide, a teacher, and in many ways, a friend. The captain gathered the crew once more. This time, there was no briefing room filled with tension, but a calm atmosphere where everyone felt they were part of a journey much larger than themselves. "We are not just explorers," the captain said. "We are the bridge between past and future. The Titan's story is our story now. We carry their memories, their mistakes, and their hopes. It is up to us to choose the path forward." The crew listened quietly, feeling the truth in those words. The past had shaped the present, but the future was still theirs to create. Over the following weeks, the Invictus crew focused on sharing the knowledge they had gained. They worked on ways to communicate more clearly with the Echo, hoping to unlock even deeper secrets. At the same time, they sent messages back to Earth and to other allied species, spreading the story of the Titans and the chance for a new beginning. One of the scientists proposed a project that captured everyone's imagination, building a new type of technology inspired by the lessons of the Titans. One that could heal rather than harm, that could connect rather than divide. The idea spread quickly. Engineers, scientists, and technicians worked together day and night, creating devices that could store energy safely, protect ecosystems, and improve communication across vast distances. This work was not just technical, it was personal. Each person on the ship felt they were helping build a future where the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. The hope was alive and growing, but the journey was not without challenges. Some crew members struggled with the weight of the legacy they carried. There were moments of doubt and fear. What if humanity was not ready for such responsibility? What if they made the same mistakes as the Titans? The captain and senior officers held open conversations, encouraging everyone to share their thoughts and feelings. They reminded the crew that no one was alone in this. Together they could face uncertainty and find strength in unity. Meanwhile, the Echo continued to share visions, sometimes beautiful, sometimes difficult. They saw worlds thriving in peace, but also shadows of conflict that could arise if old fears returned. One vision stood out, a future where humans and other species came together, not as conquerors but as partners. They built cities among the stars, exchanged ideas freely, and protected the fragile balance of the universe. This vision became a beacon for the crew. It reminded them why they had set out on this mission, to explore, yes, but also to grow, to learn, and to build a better future. As the Invictus traveled further from the gas giant, the crew prepared for new challenges. They knew other civilizations might still be wary or even hostile. But they also believed that by sharing the story of the Titans and the hope for peace, they could change minds and hearts. One day, the ship received a message from a distant star system. It was from a species that had watched the Invictus closely, curious and cautious. The message was simple but hopeful. "We see your light. We want to understand. Let us meet." The crew was overjoyed. This was the first official invitation to join in a new chapter of galactic cooperation. The Invictus adjusted its course and prepared for the meeting. Everyone knew this was more than diplomacy. It was a chance to build trust, to learn from each other, and to carry forward the lessons of the Titans. When the two ships met, it was a moment of wonder. Different beings, different technologies, but the same desire to explore and connect. The meetings that followed were filled with questions and answers, stories and dreams. They shared knowledge, culture, and hopes for the future. The idea of the Titans was no longer just history. It was a foundation for something new. Back on the Invictus, the crew felt proud but humble. They were part of a great story, one that showed both the dangers and the beauty of power, knowledge, and connection. As the ship continued its journey, the crew looked to the stars with hope. They knew the road ahead would have challenges, but also possibilities beyond imagination. The Titans had fallen, but humanity was rising. Not as conquerors, but as learners, healers, and builders of a future where the galaxy could be a home for many. And with every light year traveled, the story of the Titans and the Invictus grew brighter, an echo of the past guiding the way forward into the endless night.